with you. 11-year-old getting arrested for these riots. What about that fella you've just been hearing about in the news then, who chucked stuff at Farage? Is he going to prison? No, he isn't. Is this two-tier policing? You tell me. Lots of Ukraine, I want to talk about that. And Lucy Letby, when I say that name to you, do you think one of the worst examples of child killing in this country? Or do you shout at your screens and say, hang on a second, potential miscarriage of justice? Where are you? One of my panel has very strong opinions on that. Get in touch. gbnews.com/yoursay is how you get me on the website. Or you can email gbviews@gbnews.com. Or, of course, you can tweet or X me. But wherever you are very welcome. Let's kick off then with that 11-year-old. I wasn't actually going to cover this story, you know, because I talked about writing a lot last night. But something about this age, 11, primary school child, it stopped me in my tracks. Look, the Justice Youth Board, apparently, they have called on prosecution of children to be a last resort. I mean, 11-year-olds, Aaron Bastani, getting arrested for this kind of behaviour. And we've not just had 11, we've had 13-year-olds, 15-year-olds, 16-year-olds, and so on and so forth. Is this just fair law and order, or...?
Well, in this country, the age of criminal responsibility is 10. And if somebody older than that has been viewed or has allegedly broken the law, then obviously they'll be treated as an adult. That's just simply how our system works. I certainly don't think an 11-year-old should be punished for their involvement in this disorder. But then, of course, it depends on what they've done. If it's simply something they've said or incitement, no, because, like you say, they're a primary school child. If, however, somebody has physically assaulted somebody, I think that's very serious. So, do I think they should go to Borstal? No. But as a country, we have a criminal age of responsibility at 10, and that's where it is. Well, I think that's too young, by the way.
You think then, what?
I think criminal age of responsibility at 10, I think that's too young.
Should be what, then?
I think probably somewhere between 12 and 14, probably 12, 14.
Is it in 12 in Scotland? Am I right in thinking that? Is it 12 in Scotland? Is it 12 in Scotland?
I have no idea, I'm sorry.
I think it is. I don't know why I would randomly know that fact, but I'm sure it's 12. We'll get someone to check and I'll update you. Anyway, I'm sure the specifics of this 11-year-old will come out in good time, so I don't want to get into the specifics of him. I'm asking generally, 11-year-old primary school children, is this the kind of thing that the police should be spending their time looking to arrest?
Hang on, isn't the first question, what did these people allegedly do? If they behaved in certain ways, then it's perfectly reasonable for the police to have arrested them and for them to have been put through some sort of procedure. What happens to them afterwards is a different question. There's a grave danger with first offenders of making things worse by hitting them too hard with too much punishment. But the shock of being arrested can be quite effective in the life of somebody, and it's almost certainly worth doing. But the question has to be, what were they doing when they were arrested? The police can't ignore certain types of bad behaviour. It would be dereliction of duty. They ignore far too much as it is, and I'll never criticise the police for refusing to ignore things. I want them to stop ignoring things in general. No, there may be many worries about what you do afterwards to someone who's been arrested, and you have to be quite thoughtful and clever and subtle about it in many cases. But arresting somebody for doing bad things in a public place, it doesn't seem to me to be to something you could rule out just because someone is 11 years old.
I don't want to state the obvious nor tell other people what to do, but I do want to point out a basic parenting kind of fact. If there is law and order occurring, a breach of law and order, a riot or whatever you want to call it in your town, as a parent, you would do quite well, I think, to make sure that your children are absolutely as far away from it as possible from a safety perspective, never mind anything else, because I've seen a few examples now of people actually taking their children to those things. Can you imagine how scary that must be for those children? I also, before I move on from riots, Aaron Bastani, want to pick up that point we just heard in the headlines there. So the fella, you will be familiar with that clip, I'm sure, Nigel Farage, he was on an open-top bus. Some fella kind of got into, I don't know the technical term, but like a covered-off area which had kind of building waste in it. He chucked some rubble, coffee cup, whatever, at Nigel Farage. He has got a suspended sentence. So why do you get here's this clip. Why do you get a suspended sentence for trying to cause harm to someone like Nigel Farage, but you will be locked up for, I don't know, putting something on Facebook?
Well, all I can say is congratulations, Nigel Farage, because I was thumped in the middle of the street by somebody because of my politics, and the police didn't even process that person. They weren't even charged. So well done, Nigel, because at least something's happened to the chap. And I don't say that lightly, by the way. I mean, I was shocked. I was shocked in my own personal experience at how nothing was done, because in the words of the police, he'd had a bad time recently, so apparently you can't just charge him.
But so is that what you're telling me? So you got walloped, I remember that.
Yeah.
I don't.
You were very kind about it at the time.
Yeah, I think it's appalling. I think in society we're allowed different views. You don't go around hitting someone because you think differently for them. I would have been battered about 10 times over by now if that was permissible. It's wrong. Are you telling me then the police came out and said he was having a bad day? So
he's had a hard time recently. And then they said, because you have this kind of, what's it called? I don't know, they had some particular word for it. He'll send a letter to you apologising. I didn't even get the letter.
Restorative justice.
Restorative justice.
That's the one, yeah.
I didn't even get the letter, presumably because it's been outsourced to some social enterprise or something. But I don't even get the letter. I don't get the letter. Nothing happens to them. We don't, in many instances, we don't have law and order. We don't have a police force in many parts of the country much of the time. It's almost like a pseudo rule of law. And so in this instance, you might disagree with the sentencing. Personally, I think if it's first-time offence, good character, I don't think he should be going to prison. Of course, I don't think that. You might disagree. But at least, I would say to Nigel, at least he was charged.
What do you think, Peter?
Well, I think Aaron makes a very good point about the police, who are largely absent. I used to be slightly embarrassed about saying this, but I now say it with absolute conviction. The only thing we can do about the police is to begin now to recruit a proper police force of perhaps 100,000 people who are prepared to do what the police used to do, that is to patrol on foot, preventing crime on their own, rather than walking about in pairs discussing overtime. And once you have achieved that police force and trained it, then we disband the existing one because it's a total failure. It doesn't really exist. It doesn't do anything for me. It's a state police rather than a police force serving the public. And I would cheerfully get rid of it. You can't just get rid of it. It has to be replaced by something else. I reckon it might take a couple of years. But if I had anything to do with the Home Office, if I had the power to reform the police, that is what I would do. I would recruit and train an entirely new police force on Robert Peel principles, the ones we used to follow until about 1965. And when it was ready to move in, I'd disband the existing police force as a failure.
But what would be different in
everything?
Hitchens
The police would be present instead of absent. The police would be preventive instead of reactive. Instead of waiting for crime to happen and then charging about in fast cars with sirens, they would be there before it happened and prevent it from happening. They would be the friends of the public, and the public would be their friends. And in alliance, the police and the public are a fantastic.
So they'd be doing more dancing and more clown.
No, they would be doing no dancing at all.
Well, how are they going to make friends with their community then?
Well, I don't think everybody in the community wants, as you call it, wants to dance with the police.
A lot of people do. And
well, I don't know anybody who wants to dance with the police, and I have to tell you, I don't want to dance with the police. I think, frankly, Michelle, it's a trivial objection and
it's a very serious objection.
Not a serious point.
It's a very serious point, and let me expand. One of the criticisms that many people have with the police force at the moment is they spend too much time dancing on pride protests, painting their flags, TikToking.
They mistake pressure groups for the public. They don't see the difference. Pressure groups and political campaigners are wholly different from the general public, who the police regard with bafflement because they never meet them. The only members of the public they meet are the ones who've committed crimes or ones in lobby groups. They have totally lost.
So how do you make friends with your communities then?
By being there. You're so young. What the police used to do in this case, they used to walk along the street on their own, making themselves available to the public. They were always visible. They were constantly there. They were presence in towns. They were presence in the countryside. People knew them. They knew who to go to. They talked to them. The police heard what they said.
Well, in this day and age, a lot of police have taken the knee to slogans such as ACAB. I'll let you figure out what that means at home. Go on, Aaron.
Well, right now, my experience of the London Metropolitan Police Service is either they're very surly, aggressive, rude, hostile, or they're twerking on TikTok. And I agree with Peter. Maybe there's a middle ground here where they can just be affable, thoughtful, civilised, polite, courteous, helpful. I think perhaps that would be a wise way for them to conduct themselves.
What do you think? You'll have strong opinions. And I know that many people actually get in touch with me when we talk about policing. Either you're retired police officers or current serving police officers. You'll have strong opinions on that. Get in touch and tell me. Look, I want to talk to you. There's a lot I want to squeeze into this programme about Keir Starmer. You know what? We shall take a break and I'll do that afterwards. I also want to talk to you about Lucy Letby. And I want to ask you, how involved should we be in